Welcome back to All Yankees Talk. I'm Delilah Bork, and today I'm joined by Jack Markowski for our final episode before opening day.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk Yankees baseball opening day, one of the best days of the calendar to me. Not a Yankees fan, I'll be fully transparent. Um, but still, Wednesday night against the Giants, West Coast, that'll be a fun time for sure.
Yeah, I think it'll be great to sort of have that to start the season. It's really fun to be able to pay special attention to a game when there's no other baseball games going on. And I think you not being a Yankees fan will give you some interesting insight, maybe to things that Yankees fans aren't willing to admit. But I think the focus for what we're going to talk about today is predictions for maybe for opening day for the rest of the season. I know one thing that I'm really anticipating that they'll do is either trading for another reliever or converting one of their starters to a reliever. Not 100% sure who it's going to be. Maybe it'll be Ryan Weathers. Maybe it'll even be Carlos Agrange. But I feel like it's a big area that the Yankees have not addressed. I've talked about it before on the podcast, but in my opinion, they have fewer good relievers than they did last season, other than David Bednar. David Bednar, you're exempt from all of this. You're the best reliever they have. But David Bednar can't pitch 2 innings every single game. So who else is going to do it? And I think that the answer is maybe a little, I don't want to say scary, but it's a little worrying to me. And so I think that the Yankees have a very similar problem to last year, which is that they're not closing out games well. They lose some games due to the relief pitching. And then at the trade deadline, they're like, oh God, we have to get a pitcher. The difference to me between this season and last season is in 2025, you didn't know that that was going to happen because they had Luke Weaver, they had Devin Williams. And this season, they absolutely should know. But that's something I really foresee coming down the pipeline for them.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like you said, Bednar, I think he's probably one of the best closers in baseball. He's more of a sure thing than Devin Williams really ever was, even coming into the year, in my opinion. And I think the Yankees can probably feel pretty confident about the end of games just because I think Camilo Doval's due for a bounce back. I know he wasn't great for the Yankees last year. Fernando Cruz, I really like. And then Tim Hill's like about as steady of a left-handed reliever as they come, but just the rest of the bullpen is just so uninspiring. Like Jake Bird, are you really counting on Jake Bird to give you much? I don't know. Paul Blackburn, I know the Yankees like his stuff. They think he's Luke Weaver 2.0. I don't see it. He throws low 90s. He wasn't great for the Yankees last year. Not a ton of bullpen experience. And then you're counting on like Cade Winquist if he even makes the roster as a Rule 5 guy. Ryan Yarbrough, decent swingman. We'll see. I think Luis Heel could start out of the bullpen, start the season out of the bullpen. I think that's probably the right move to make. Or it could be Ryan Weathers. Like you said, I think Weathers has the stuff that would play out of the bullpen, maybe more so than a guy like, Will Warren, who is more of an innings eater type, not great stuff, but you can count on him to, throw 5 innings every night. So we'll see. I do think also, like you said, there's a real risk of running into a situation like last year where you have to get 3 guys at the deadline, which it's easier to get relievers at the deadline than really any other position. So maybe that's not the worst situation to be in. But you would like a little more security in the bullpen. Like maybe Legrand could come up and be a true shutdown reliever. I think that's definitely a realistic possibility. But yeah, no, the bullpen of the 3 areas, if we're talking lineup rotation, bullpen is by far my number one concern for them right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it especially seems, I think the problem gets masked by the fact that the Yankees have, I think by the time Cole and Rodon are back, arguably the best rotation in baseball. And then that's paired with one of the best offenses in baseball as well. As much as people say Aaron Judge strikes out too much, or whatever people say about Aaron Judge, that I honestly don't really get. But they do have top starting rotation, top offense to then be paired with what's ultimately a fairly weak bullpen. And like you said, it is easier to get relievers by the trade deadline, but I also think it's much easier to strike out, I guess,
Mhm.
on relief pitchers. The same with Doval, I do think can have a resurgence, but Jake Bird, I'm like you said, really, really not sure about. He was not good in his 3 games with the Yankees last year. He got optioned back to AAA. I do think that maybe he's gotten a little bit better. He has more time with the Yankees coaches, not so much on him. And he knows, he gave an interview at the beginning of spring training where he was like, yeah, I know that that was really bad. Um, but I feel like they are not going to like what they're seeing out of the bullpen necessarily, and something has to happen. And honestly, I kind of prefer the idea of making Weathers or LeGrand or even putting Winquist on the roster for a relief position, um, as opposed to trying to bring in someone new. Because I feel like trying to bring in someone new other than Bednar didn't work so great for them last year. And I don't really think that the reliever market is too terribly different.
Yeah, I agree. I think Weathers would be probably the number one candidate just because the spring has kind of been brutal, not to be too harsh for him, but it hasn't gone super, super well. I know he has potential. And I think the Yankees, I think they carry themselves with I guess, the mindset that they're smarter than everybody else in terms of pitching development. And honestly, I think they've deserved that reputation or to have that idea just because you see year after year, especially with starters, you look into the minor league system or just how the rotation, performs every year. It's usually near the top of the league. So maybe they'll figure everything out. Maybe Weathers will, flip a switch once the season starts, whether that's in the rotation or the bullpen. But I think he's probably best suited for the bullpen. I don't know if that means Yarborough starts or Luis Heel starts. I don't, I'm not super confident in Heel, but that might be a better, idea than Weathers really at this point. So we'll see.
I certainly think he's the better candidate for putting in the extra work in the AAA. I just think like he's younger. I think his ceiling is higher. He's shown that his ceiling is higher, whereas Weathers feels a little bit more like, okay, we were chalking it up to your injury situation the past couple of years, but now you're not injured like really at all. And you're still, I think he's got an 11.68 ERA. And he has gotten like tied for some of the most starts in Yankees camp. So it's not going great. It could certainly go better. But just switching gears to some other things, I one of the predictions I wanted to talk about is whether or not Aaron Judge will get his 4th MVP. I feel like I want to cash in now. I think he's going to. I think that there's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of talk because it's lonely at the top. His only basis of comparison, in my opinion at least, for position players is Shohei Ohtani, who is better at some things, not as good at some things. Like it's the two of them, and then it's sort of a gap, and then it's everyone else. Not that there aren't phenomenal other players, but I really think something insane would have to happen in a more well-rounded way than it did with Kyle Riley last year for Judge to not get the MVP. Or maybe he gets injured and misses 3/4 of the season. Like a lot of crazy things could happen, but I feel like if you were to bet now that Judge is going to be MVP, you're not making a ton of money when he wins the award because it feels like a lock.
Yeah, I mean, he's the runaway favorite and for good reason. He's probably at the very least a top 3 right-handed hitter of all time. He had back-to-back 10 WAR seasons. I think if he stays healthy, the only way he wouldn't win is if there's voter fatigue. Like, I think the situation last
Yeah.
year is set up perfectly for Cal Raleigh to win. A catcher hitting 60 home runs is unheard of, and Judge still won. So I think there's guys that could challenge him. Like maybe Raleigh puts together another historic season. Maybe a guy like Gunnar Henderson or Bobby Witt, someone like that, a shortstop, comes out and puts up a 10 WAR season too. But Judge, I feel like he's a lock for 50 home runs. He's going to put up like a 1.1 OPS, 10 WAR, 120, 130 RBI. So yeah, I would be shocked if he doesn't win if he plays even 130 or 140 games, misses a little bit of time, not even the 150 that he's played each of the past 2 years. So I'm with you there. I think Judge is a pretty safe bet to win a 4th MVP.
Yeah, I think something I feel less confident on is thinking about predictions. I really see it being a tight race for the AL East again. I've seen some Fangraphs, I think, projected that the Yankees were going to win. But I mean, it's just so narrow in this division. Last year, they ended up with the same record as the Blue Jays and only lost the tiebreaker, which I think is emblematic of how the Yankees were playing last year. But I feel like there's no sure way to put it. And I actually honestly wouldn't be surprised if they're in almost the same situation, 3 more games that we won and we would have won the AL East and maybe even the AL overall. So I want to know what the the people who are predicting that it's for sure going to be the Yankees. I want to know what information they have that I don't because I think it's going to be real tough.
Yeah, I think there's 4 teams that can win it. I think the Red Sox, Blue Jays, Yankees, and Orioles are all playoff caliber teams. I think for me, and most of the predictions that you see have the Blue Jays and the Yankees being the top dogs. I think Toronto is going to drop off a little bit. I don't love the rotation. I don't love the lineup. I still think they're probably a high 80s win team. But for me, I think the Red Sox are the best team in the division. I think the rotation with Garrett Crochet, Sonny Gray, Brian Bayo, the bullpen with Aroldis Chapman, I think the lineup is better than people give it credit for. So I think Boston is the Yankees' biggest competitor. I think they're both probably low to mid 90s win teams. And I think the Orioles, if their pitching clicks, they could win the division too. I'm not confident in that at all. But I think they may have a better lineup than the Yankees, or at least on par with the Yankees, because you bring in Pete Alonso, Gunnar Henderson, you hope is healthy. So we'll see. I could definitely see the Yankees winning the division. I could see them, if everything clicks, winning close to 100 games. I really could. But I'm just not confident confident enough in them to say that they're like the runaway favorites or, the best team in the division right now.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, it's tough to be like, it depends, but it really does depend. I totally agree with you on Boston. I think also like there's something about that rivalry where they really kind of trade wins back and forth that makes it really tough to predict who would win or win in a tiebreaker. The Orioles, I think, are really interesting. It's probably tough out there to be an Orioles fan and just be have your team be in such a difficult division that maybe they miss out on the playoffs sometimes purely because they're stacked against a few teams that somehow managed to be even better. But it'll for sure be a division to watch. I don't foresee it being like, oh, there's this team that's dead last in the bottom and like a couple that are maybe 5 games ahead of them. I think it'll be a fun division to watch. It always is. It was last year. It will be again. And did you have any other things you see happening for the Yankees this season?
Yeah, I'm going to predict that. I'm not sure who between the two, but I think one of Dominguez or Spencer Jones is going to be the starting center fielder by the end of the year instead of Trent Grisham. I don't see him repeating his 30 home run year. For his entire career, he's always been a glove first player that's, a below average hitter. So, I mean, before this past year, his career high in homers was 17. He hadn't posted a WRC plus of over 100 in a full season outside of 2021. So I still think he's going to be useful. I think he's probably due for, some positive regression, if that's the right term, defensively, because he did not grade out well last year. But I'm just more confident in Dominguez or even Spencer Jones to be a better bat, a better all around option than Trent Grisham.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it would be one thing if Grisham took the momentum that he had last year, and even if he was like a little bit worse in spring training, but he's been not very good in spring training. And as much as that's not necessarily indicative, and even Aaron Boone will say till he's blue in the face that they're not worried about the players' performances in spring training, which is almost a little crazy. Um, it just doesn't look like it's there. So I agree with you. I will be really curious to see if Jones ends up uh at center field. I mean, I certainly think that they might call him up, give him a few reps, or are they going to use him as trade fodder? I think the Yankees are real quick to leverage their most talked about prospects for veterans who fill more immediate needs. For a center fielder, I don't know if like it would be 1-to-1, but certainly if another big need arises, I think that his trade capital is probably at an all-time high. But certainly I would love to see him play, even if his strikeout rate stays the same as it was in the minors last year. He just hits a crazy amount of home runs, and the Yankees, like we were talking about with the relief pitching, kind of rely on that insane offensive performance to make up for some other things. I also think something that I was thinking about is whether or not Ryan McMahon will still be with the Yankees come August, because I don't know. I think that McMahon's defense is fine. It's not awful. There are certainly worse third basemen, but I also think that his offense is awful. I think that they certainly don't want a player who can barely hit and fields well enough. So I kind of foresee them making some kind of trade for who I'm not sure. Maybe they'll move someone around. I could see Osvaldo Cabrera coming back and having a big season. He has a lot of experience with all the infield positions, so maybe they put him in at third base if he can do well there. But as much as I'm a fan of McMahon's for arbitrary reasons, I think I just decided to like the guy. I don't know that he's going to be a Yankee next year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think his struggles offensively were kind of predictable when he came over from Colorado, just because you're playing in what's pretty comfortably the most offensive, or it helps your offensive numbers the most in Coors Field. And his swing is made for Yankee Stadium, just with the short porch and right field, but it never translated as a Yankee. I just don't think he's a good offensive player. Now, I think if the rest of the lineup is good enough, you can kind of hide his bat a little bit towards the end of the lineup. Maybe they are in that situation. Maybe they value his gloves so much that they're willing to put up with, I don't know, 15 home runs, a 680, 670 OPS. But, I could see a situation where they trade him or they put him on the bench. I don't know if you try Jose Caballero at third. You don't want to move Jazz Chisholm back to third. That whole debacle with LeMahieu last year was kind of avoidable, in my opinion. But yeah, I would be a little surprised if McMahon were still the starting third baseman by the deadline, or at least the end of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think there are some teams where that offense would be a little bit more excusable, but on the Yankees, where almost every other player is hitting so much better than you are, you stick out like a sore thumb. For fans, for Aaron Boone, for the front office, I just think like if they can get anything for him, they will. I think it's probably in retrospect real disappointing that they weren't able to get Eugenio Suarez. I think because his defense is around the same as McMahon's, maybe it's a little worse, and his offense is just that much better. I think that team then becomes way stronger. That's not to say that could be off the table, but seems like it is. So I'm not sure what you would do at third necessarily, but I don't think it's going to be McMahon. Speaking of the infield, I was thinking today about sort of, I guess, a hypothetical of what they're going to do when Anthony Volpe comes back, should Jose Caballero have a great start to the season. I think that that's totally not off the table for him. Volpe can hit I think last year, like almost 20 home runs. So he can hit home runs, but he strikes out a lot, and his defense is kind of abysmal. Obviously, shortstops tend to get the short end of the stick when it comes to defensive metrics, but he tied for second or third in the league last year with 19 errors. And just really, I mean, the Yankees fan base just likes to rip him up, which I almost feel bad about because we didn't know the extent of his labrum tear until October. But I think that something could end up happening by the time he is ready to come back, especially if Caballero is doing well.
Yeah, I kind of think Volpe and Caballero fall in the same category in terms of what style of player they are. Volpe has more power. And I do think Volpe is a better defender than the metrics would have you believe. Last year, he's either won one or two Gold Gloves. but I think you're getting more base running value out of Caballero. I think he's more of a sure thing. And just, I mean, this isn't really a fair way to evaluate players, but I feel like he's gotten too much runway. Volpe has, where I mean, he was one of the top prospects in the game, coming into his rookie year in 2023, and he's just never put it all together. I don't want to say it's over for him in terms of like he can't become a better hitter or he can't become more consistent. But I think Caballero just right now, not even considering Volpe's injury, is the better player. And I just think he deserves more of the opportunities now. If he flames out or he doesn't play well the first month of the year and then Volpe comes back, like, yeah, I could understand giving Volpe a starting job back. But I think Aaron Boone would insert him back into the starting lineup no matter what Caballero is doing, unless he's like, Caballero turns into Aaron Judge or something. So yeah, I would, if it were up to me, I would start Caballero. I'm not confident the Yankees are going to do that when both players are healthy, but I think Volpe's time has kind of come to move on or be a bench player or whatever. You can't keep starting him if he's the same player he has been over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And that's even something that I forgot about is how much Aaron Boone just like loves him. Like and has gone on the record so many times saying, I don't understand why you would bench this guy or send him back to the minors. And then similarly just gets absolutely ripped apart for it, although clearly not that he cares. Um but I totally agree. I think that it's one thing to have some struggles your first full season in the majors, but this is going on like his third full season, I believe his fourth since debuting, and it's sort of like why why wouldn't you give Caballero more chances? So I think will play out pretty interestingly, and hopefully they end up with someone that they can start and perform consistently. I think that maybe Volpe's hit his ceiling, or maybe he needs the opportunity to play for a fan base that doesn't hate him. I really don't know. Um, but yeah, the one final prediction or thing that I wanted to talk about was where we think the World Series is going to go, because I think that there are a lot of people, both analysts, fans, who want to predict that the Yankees are going to at least be in the World Series, if not win. I certainly could see a three-peat for the Dodgers incoming. They haven't gotten weaker. In fact, they've only gotten terrifyingly strong over this last offseason. But I think that as far as the postseason goes, the Yankees are making it further than the divisional series, but I think it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, the AL is so, I feel like all the top teams fall in. There's a lot of parity in the AL, in my opinion. I could see Boston going to the World Series. I could see the Yankees going. I think if everything clicks, Baltimore could go. Toronto. I like Detroit a lot. I think for me, Seattle is probably the favorite. That rotation, you can make an argument, is the best in the league. And then the Dodgers are just a full-on Death Star. Like they could win 125 games. I wouldn't be shocked. Edwin Diaz and Kyle Tucker this offseason. It's definitely chalky, but I would say it's going to be a Mariners Dodgers World Series. I don't really even in the NL. It's the Mets, the Phillies, maybe the Braves, the Cubs who could challenge the Dodgers. I just don't think any of them have the talent that the Dodgers do. The AL, like I said, is a little bit more up in the air. I could definitely see the Yankees going back. It would be fun to see a rematch of the 24 World Series. So yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fun season to watch. Certainly, this sort of like bi-coastal looming threat of the Dodgers, I think, is a really fun storyline. I know you would love to see the Mets be able to challenge them. That would be really interesting. I don't know that it's gonna happen. But yeah, certainly it's sort of there's more battling it out in the AL, which I think in some ways maybe makes teams a little bit grittier. I certainly was surprised when the Blue Jays forced a game 7 last season, not necessarily because the Blue Jays weren't a great team. They played phenomenally throughout the whole series, but because the Dodgers are so locked down. So I think that in some ways, being in the AL gives you a little bit of an edge because you don't have to fight as much in the NL if you're the Dodgers. But I also think that if you're any other team in the NL, what are you even doing? I mean, they got just so many great players this offseason that it's almost jaw dropping. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, it's always fun to talk about in March who is going to be in the World Series in October. Um, but I think that's everything for now. Thank you so much for coming on, Jack. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you on Thursday.
All right. Thank you for having me on too. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, great.